The neutral station's conference room hummed with the quiet tension of interspecies diplomacy. Lieutenant Cale Thorne adjusted his formal uniform collar, stealing another glance at his assigned liaison. 3 hours of trade negotiations, and Teari had barely spoken beyond the required translations. She sat with perfect posture, her pale purple skin almost luminescent under the station's artificial lighting. Dark curls framed her face in elegant waves, and when she did look up from her data pad, her eyes held depths that seemed to reflect distant starlight. Everything about her people, the Velnari, spoke of refined grace, from their melodic language to their flowing movements. The human delegation had called for a recess, leaving Cale alone with his silent companion. The quiet stretched between them like a chasm. He'd worked with alien liaisons before, but none had seemed so untouchable. Professional to the point of coldness. The negotiations are going well, he offered, hoping to break the suffocating silence. Teari's fingers paused over her data pad. Yes, Lieutenant. The trade parameters are acceptable. Her voice carried that same careful neutrality she'd maintained all day. Cale leaned back in his chair, studying her profile. Something about her careful composure tugged at him. Maybe it was the way she held herself so rigid, as if afraid to show any emotion. Or perhaps it was the brief moments when he'd caught her looking at him, only to have her quickly avert her gaze. You don't have to be so formal with me, you know, he said gently. We're going to be working together for the next several days. She finally looked up, and for a moment, he saw something flicker in those remarkable eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even longing. The sight made his chest tighten unexpectedly. I'm sorry if I seem distant, she said quietly. It's simply how my people conduct professional relationships. Your people have beautiful customs, he replied, then found himself adding without thinking, your eyes, they're beautiful, you know. The reaction was immediate and startling. Teari's pale skin flushed a deep, iridescent purple that seemed to ripple across her features like aurora light. Her hands began to tremble, the data pad slipping from her fingers to clatter on the table. I must. She stammered, rising abruptly. Excuse me. She fled the room, leaving Cale staring after her in complete bewilderment, wondering what he'd possibly said wrong. Cale paced his quarters, replaying the afternoon's events. Teari's reaction had been so intense, so visceral, like he'd physically struck her. The way her skin had flushed that deep purple, how her hands trembled. What could a simple compliment have triggered? Unable to shake his concern, he activated his terminal and accessed the station's cultural database. The Velnari section was extensive but frustratingly clinical. Their society valued emotional restraint, privacy in personal matters, formal hierarchies. Nothing explained why telling someone their eyes were beautiful would cause such distress. Computer, connect me to cultural advisor Jenna Voss, he said finally. The middle-aged woman's hologram materialized, her expression curious. Lieutenant Thorne. Unusual to get calls this late. Having issues with your liaison? You could say that. Cale explained the incident, watching Jenna's expression shift from confusion to understanding to something approaching alarm. Oh, Cale, she said softly. Tell me you didn't compliment a Velnari female's eyes. I did. Why? What's wrong with that? Jenna ran her hands through her hair. Compliments among the Velnari aren't casual remarks. They're sacred. Reserved exclusively for bonded pairs, what we'd call marriage. And they're only given when complete trust and emotional intimacy have been established. Cale's stomach dropped. You're saying I accidentally proposed, essentially. Or declared your intention to court her for life partnership. To her people, praising someone's eyes is like offering your soul to them. It's the most intimate thing one Velnari can say to another. The room seemed to spin. But I'm human. Surely she knows I didn't mean. That's probably what's terrifying her, Jenna interrupted. Did you mean it? Because if you didn't, she'll feel humiliated. If you did. She paused. Velnari don't enter emotional bonds lightly, Kale. Their entire culture revolves around controlled, measured responses. For her to react so strongly, to lose that composure. What are you saying? I'm saying she might have feelings for you she's been suppressing. And your words just forced her to confront them. Jenna's expression grew serious. This isn't just a diplomatic misunderstanding anymore. You've entered deeply personal territory. How you handle this will determine whether you've destroyed a working relationship or discovered something profound. Kale sank into his chair, mind reeling. Tomorrow's negotiations suddenly seemed far less important than finding Teari and somehow making this right. The next morning's session was torture. Teari arrived precisely on time, her composure seemingly restored, but she wouldn't meet Kale's eyes. Every time he tried to catch her gaze, she looked away, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. The mineral rights clause needs revision, she said, her voice perfectly professional as she addressed the table rather than him. Agreed, Kale replied, hoping to inject some normalcy. Perhaps we could. I'll handle the amendments. She cut him off smoothly, already turning to the alien delegates. Throughout the morning, Kale noticed other species representatives watching them with interest. A reptilian Thek delegate whispered something to his companion, both glancing at Teari with what looked like knowing expressions. Even the normally stoic Centauri observer seemed amused by something. During the lunch break, Kale cornered Commander Vex, the Thek who'd been watching them. Commander, may I ask what you find so fascinating about our delegation? Vex's scaled features shifted into what might have been a smile. Ah, Lieutenant. Your liaison bears the tremor mark. The what? When Velnari experience profound emotional shock, their skin retains subtle color variations for days. She carries the deep purple threading of one who has received significant emotional declaration. His tongue flicked out thoughtfully. Most interesting to observe between species. Heat flooded Kale's face. It's not what you think. No. Then why does she refuse to look upon you? Why does her breathing change when you speak? Vex leaned closer. We Thek are excellent observers of micro-expressions, Lieutenant. Your female is in emotional turmoil. Before Kale could respond, alarms began blaring. The station's emergency lights bathed the corridor in red as the announcement echoed, hull breach in Section 7. All personnel to emergency stations. In the chaos that followed, Kale and Teari found themselves pressed together in an emergency shelter, the crisis-forcing proximity she'd been avoiding. Her shoulder touched his arm, and he felt her trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper. Teari, he whispered. She finally looked at him, and in her eyes he saw conflict, longing, and something that might have been hope. For a moment, the careful walls she'd constructed seemed to crack. Please, she breathed, so quietly only he could hear. Don't make this harder than it already is. The raw vulnerability in her voice told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about cultural misunderstanding anymore. The crisis passed within hours, but Kale couldn't shake the image of Teari's conflicted expression. That evening, he found himself standing outside her quarters, heart pounding as he pressed the door chime. She opened it, still wearing her formal robes, though her hair had escaped its careful arrangement. Lieutenant. This is highly irregular. I know. But we need to talk. Really talk. For a long moment, she studied his face. Then, seemingly against her better judgment, she stepped aside. Her quarters were sparse but elegant, with soft lighting that made her pale skin seem to glow. About yesterday. He began. You don't understand our ways, she said quickly, moving to put distance between them. What you said. I know what it means now. Her eyes widened in surprise. Jenna explained everything. I compliments, bonded pairs, the sacred nature of. He took a breath. I know I accidentally proposed to you. Teari's composure cracked completely. She sank into a chair, her hands shaking as she pressed them to her face. You cannot possibly understand the turmoil you've caused. Then help me understand. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. My people, we spend our entire lives learning to control our emotions. To feel deeply is considered weakness. To express those feelings publicly is shameful. Her voice broke slightly. But when you said those words, what happened? I felt everything I'd been suppressing for days. Weeks, perhaps. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Since the moment I met you, you've been different. Your easy warmth, your genuine smiles, the way you treat me as an equal rather than a useful tool. Kale's heart hammered. Teari. I've been fighting my attraction to you, she whispered. Telling myself it was impossible, inappropriate. Then you spoke those sacred words, and I could no longer pretend. She turned to face him, her skin flushing that beautiful iridescent purple. I've been dreaming of you, Lieutenant. Imagining what it would be like to touch you, to be touched by you. The confession hung between them like a bridge. Slowly, Kale crossed the room until he stood before her. May I? He asked softly, raising his hand. She nodded, and he gently cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheek. Her skin was incredibly soft, warming under his touch. I didn't mean to propose, he said quietly. But I'm not sorry I did. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. Show me, she whispered. Show me what human affection feels like. 3 days later, Kale found Teari in the station's observation deck, watching the stars while slowly past the massive viewport. She'd been avoiding the formal dinners, choosing instead to spend her evenings in quiet contemplation. The negotiations concluded successfully, he said, joining her at the railing. Yes. Both our peoples should benefit from the new agreements. She glanced at him, then away. You'll be returning to Earth soon. In 2 days. He moved closer, noting how her breathing changed. Come with me. She looked at him in surprise. I cannot simply abandon my duties. I've already spoken to your cultural attaché. There's a position available at the embassy. If you want it. He took her hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit in his. I've learned something about your people's customs. Oh. From his pocket, he withdrew a small, intricately carved pendant, a traditional Velnari eye symbol he'd commissioned from the station's artisans. This is how a suitor formally requests permission to court, isn't it? Teari's eyes widened as she recognized the significance. Kale, this is a proper proposal. Done the right way, with understanding of what it means. He dropped to one knee, holding up the pendant. Teari of the Velnari, your eyes are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Not just because they're lovely, but because they show me your soul. Will you accept my courtship? Tears flowed freely down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes. Yes, I will. He stood, fastening the pendant around her neck with trembling fingers. The moment it settled against her skin, she pulled him into a kiss that was both tender and desperate, months of suppressed longing finally finding expression. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. I have one condition, she said against his lips. Anything. Teach me about human customs. I want to understand your people the way you've learned to understand mine. Kale smiled, pulling her close as the stars continued their eternal dance beyond the viewport. I think we have a lifetime to figure that out together. She laughed, a sound like silver bells, and for the first time since he'd met her, Teari seemed completely, perfectly at peace. The accidental proposal had become something far more beautiful, a bridge between two worlds, built on understanding, respect, and love that transcended species.